So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Kurenai. So let's start the series. In the hospital of Hyde Ninja Village, 5-year-old Naruto was leaning on a bed. His brain felt like it was being repeatedly struck by a bat, his legs felt like they were dragged down by elephants, and his heart felt like it was running a marathon. Behind him, the nurses were whispering once more. One of them patted his back softly with medicine, and he huddled closer to himself than he could. Despite their best attempts, he refused to speak to any of them. He was in good physical condition. It was quite another matter in the mind. A flashback. Run, 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 do not stop, must continue, Naruto pondered. Even if his feet were moving more quickly than usual, it was still insufficient. It was never quick enough. The hatred on the faces of the folks behind him made them move aside. His eyes began to well up with tears, but he forced them away. He was no longer running quickly enough. However, the ANBU tasked with keeping an eye on him was unable to keep up. The young lad paused beside a stream and gazed at his image in the mirror, asking himself, "Am I an outcast, demon, or monster?" he pondered. His azure eyes gazed back at him, perhaps anticipating a response. He was not physically attacked by the villagers. They were more of a "stay away from the devil and let's hope he dies" kind of person. Yes, they would frequently eject him from the stores and openly glare at him, but that was his life. He had learned to live with it that way. The elderly man occasionally paid him visits in the orphanage, particularly on his birthday, but it wasn't always very beneficial. He didn't want to share his problems with the man. The old man would occasionally drop by to check on him and make sure he was drinking his milk and eating his vegetables. He wouldn't, of course. The devil gave the milk. The old guy would urge him, "You have to drink your milk if you want to be strong like me someday, Naruto-kun." Furthermore, Naruto would cheerfully respond, "Oij-san, that would never happen. The day I drink that cursed milk is the day I die." The Hokage recognized that was the best course of action. Naruto was obstinate and avoided doing anything at any costs when he didn't want to. For a moment, Naruto's shoulders heaved. He appeared to be laughing to the uninformed onlooker, but that was not the case at all. Naruto shook off all the negative thoughts for a minute, regaining his sense of reality as he sat on the rocks since those tears were almost at their breaking point. His sanctuary was the Hokage Monument. We greeted the breathtaking sunrise and sunset with wide arms. He and the animals were the only ones without glares. He hated to admit it, but he got along better with the animals than with the villagers. Of course, with some expectations. Later that evening, while strolling through the woodland, something attacked him in the face. He sensed it but did not see it coming. He could sense it even though he couldn't see it. A fur ball groaned and slapped its tail on his damaged cheek before taking off in a new direction. He thought about pursuing it, but he wasn't really in the mood to go after that ball of fur. A gasp came out of his throat abruptly. His air began to leak out of his jeans as his eyes clamped tight. He fell to the woodland floor, clutching his chest. Put an end to the flashback. He still had a sore back from the forest floor. One visitor remained in the room, but the nurses had departed while he was asleep. Naruto-kun? Oij-san? Why was the elderly man in this place? Naruto felt his ears heat up when the elderly man laughed quietly. He looked away from that voice and sheepishly touched the back of his head. Naruto calmed down when he said, "I heard you were in the hospital, and I decided to take a break and visit you." His eyes were still closed as he turned to face him. The Hokage scowled at this and said, "Thank you?" "Thank you?" The old Hokage was perplexed by this. "For what, Naruto-kun?" "For caring for me." The tiny lad was startled as the Sandaime pressed him up against his chest. Naruto didn't understand the consoling gesture. Sarutobi laid his head against the man and rocked him to sleep while the blonde closed his eyes and sang a little melody. A small fist nestled further into the warmth, holding onto the Hokage's robe with an unexpectedly firm grip. Sarutobi put the sleeping blonde back on the cot and grinned at him. A few hours later, the nurses gently woke him up to perform the standard examination. He observed the boy being closely examined by the nurses, as though he were as delicate as a glass bowl. The other nurses were intrigued by her strange conduct until one of them gently gasped in her hands. As he approached the small kid, Sarutobi took a deep breath. He caught his pipe before it touched the floor after nearly dropping it. He noticed that Naruto's baby blue eyes had been replaced with a somewhat paler sky blue. Naruto moved away from him, and Sarutobi blinked. He reasoned that the boy must have been aware of this. Why? Why did he keep it to himself? Was he scared? If that's the case. Whom? The fox. Was Naruto altered in any way by that jerk of a fox? Would have detected it if the fox had been the cause of this. Sarutobi had too many questions and not enough answers throughout the evening. The council will not be pleased with this development, he thought aloud. Later that morning, Naruto's head hurt, but it wasn't from a headache or anything else. His eyes were a little sore, but not enough to make him think about it. He had heard the nurses conversing in the hallway, and he had hoped that they were like the others, but Kami showed him that they weren't. As long as they didn't tell the old man, he was fine. We need to talk, Naruto, he mumbled to himself. Damn it! Why was Kami treating him so cruelly? Sarutobi placed his Hokage hat on the chair behind him and looked at the youngster in front of him. He signed the report the doctor had given him and asked, How are you feeling, Naruto-kun? It's better. I appreciate you asking, Oichi-san. How are your eyes? Naruto tensed up and attempted to dismiss it, but Sarutobi had already noticed. Fine, Ij-san. This report says otherwise, Naruto-kun. Naruto turned away, hoping it wouldn't come to this. He opened his eyes and faced the man once more. He added softly, I didn't want you to know. Seeing that Sarutobi didn't answer, he used it as an opportunity to continue. I didn't think that if you knew, you would treat me differently. I didn't want you to always worry about me. You had a small heart attack, Naruto-kun. You have more anxiousness than the majority of shinobi. You aren't even yet in your teens. Why are you attempting to do this alone? Sarutobi was forced to sign and let the youngster think on his own when he received no reaction. After 3 hours. As usual, the civilian side was clamoring for Naruto's murder, and the council was in disarray. The dread was there in their eyes, and although the glares had subsided over the years, the hatred remained. Sarutobi stood in front of them, arms folded across his chest, staring down at everyone else. If the child is blinded, we must take action while it's weakened, said Koharu. Would you murder a child, you old bat? Some snarled. Shikaku whispered, This meeting is troublesome. Sarutobi rubbed his brow and said, We're not killing any children, Koharu. Don't be stupid, Sarutobi. The rest of society is at danger because of the child. He ought to be prevented from going to the academy. You ought to have permitted him to enroll in my root program, Danzo remarked. Hear me out. The council fell silent. I have the last word as the Hokage. Furthermore, I state that the boy will have a guardian to keep him safe until he is 18 or older. This meeting is adjourned. Later on in the day, Sarutobi had dispatched his secretary to locate one of his ANBU, who had just returned from a mission from Kiri, and he had never imagined the day would come when he would not see any paperwork for the first time in years. You called me, Hokage-sama? Eyeing the ANBU's mark on his right shoulder, Sarutobi swung around in his chair and looked at it. Kurenai-san. Please sit down. It will take a while. And when we're alone, please take off that mask. Her long ebony hair trailed down to her shoulders, giving her an untamed look as they curled at the tips, and her red eyes pierced through the Hokage, something few shinobi could do. The masked nin calmly accepted the seat that was offered to her. The mask was now strapped to her hostler on the floor. Sarutobi cleared his throat and leaned back in the chair. Throughout my life, I've met a lot of people. Some good. Some are awful. I've also come to realize that I can't keep anyone safe. Life may be a bitch at times. Life can be awful at times. Sometimes you just need to learn how to move on from the past, no matter how much you wish you could go back in time. Hold on. The idea is that I know someone in the village who is in need of someone right now. Furthermore, I am sadly unable to be that person. Sometimes life is just. Are you referring to the boy from Uzumaki? Quietly, she inquired. Sarutobi perspired. What's so clear? Kind of, sir. Hold on. Kurenai-san, you're among my favorite jonin in the village. No one needs a loved one in their life, including me. Despite his outward displays of happiness and smiles, he is still just 5 years old at heart. However, there must be someone more qualified than me to take care of the boy, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi believed he would be signing more frequently, so he did it again for the 1000th time that day. The parents of the boy have passed away. There is no sign of his godfather, and I seriously doubt that you want Guy or 6th headmaster to look after the youngster. Kurenai imagined a mini 6th headmaster reading that awful Ika Ika Paradise novel in public without feeling embarrassed. Then she imagined something even worse than a mini 6th headmaster, a mini Guy. Mike Guy was already transforming one innocent child into a miniature version of himself, and she would be damned if she saw this sweet, innocent boy transformed into a youth wearing spandex weirdo. You can see my issue now. Given the responsibility of raising such a young child, accepting this assignment will result in you receiving the usual monthly salary of an S-rank task. Until the boy turns 18 or until you or he pass away, you will be considered his guardian. Whichever one suits you best. I also ask for a checkup report on the boy every week or month. Naturally, to ensure that he is properly nourished and cared for. I have to be informed right away if the boy has any medical issues. Hokage-sama, what kind of health issues do you have? Sarutobi signed once more, as he was doing frequently these days. I assume that Naruto Uzumaki has been blind for the past few days. Whether it is related to it or not is yet unknown to us. Or he has been hurt by someone. Additionally, I assume that the youngster is prone to anxiety attacks because of his solitude or anything else. However, Hokage-sama, you yourself stated that the youngster is only 5 years old. He's too young to experience anxiety attacks. Is he not? Kurenai palmed her face while Sarutobi shrugged his shoulders. That boy needs someone right now, and that's the only thing I know for sure. So, will you accept this assignment or not? Outside, Naruto heard voices, though he was still unable to identify them. Naruto-kun? Are you up yet? He was shifting in the bed, unsure of what to think of the new person because he could no longer see, and he was unable to move around much because the nurses had decided to bind him to the bed last night because they were worried that he might have run off or something. All right, so perhaps he was going to get some fresh air, but that didn't mean he wasn't going back, was it? Do you frequently attempt to leave hospitals when you shouldn't? The voice, which was unmistakably female, chuckled softly. The blonde boy still didn't answer. Are you this quiet around strangers all the time? Do you ask a lot of questions all the time? Down in the room, there was a loud smack. Well, maybe he deserved it, but it was true, Sundays were meant to be a day of rest. If you haven't noticed, he wasn't relaxed at all. Who are you? Your new Ka-san. At first, Kurenai thought the boy was laughing, but her heart stopped when she saw crystal-shaped beads rolling down his whisker-marked cheeks. She wrapped her arms around him, and after a few moments of weariness, she felt her dress get all soggy, but she tried to push that thought in the back of her mind. Kurenai had expected a nasty remark from the boy, but he did not react to the news. His shoulders were heaving, his entire body was trying to shrink. She would have to read up on the boy's past. It came slowly. He clenched her shirt in his two small fists, fighting the embrace while his body ached from crying. He struck her in the stomach and side a few times, but each time the blows became weaker and lighter. Mothers don't exist for demons. Demons are emotionless. For what reason would you adopt a demon as a son? He let out breaking cries as he said. To me, you're not a monster as long as your heart beats and you have a soul. You're not big enough to be a monster. Ignorance spreads more quickly than a fire. Because you have a heart, I adopted you. You have a soul, which is why I adopted you. For the first time in a long time, the boy's body erupted with feeling as the enigmatic woman pulled him toward her body. I adopted you because I want to get to know you. Naruto-kun, I will never let you leave. I will always be with you. I don't want to go. Please, Naruto-kun. This is not something we have time for. 3 years have passed since Kurenai adopted young Naruto, and to be honest, she was regretting every moment of it. Sure, she didn't have to teach him how to use the toilet seat or change his diapers, but everything else was free game. She struggled to persuade Naruto that ramen wasn't the best food and that milk wasn't from the devil. I detest going to school. Last year, I hardly spoke to anyone. Why will this year be so different? Kurenai was directly behind Naruto as he hurried out of the room. You will attend the academy as long as you reside in my home. Once more. Additionally, you want to at least try to make some acquaintances this year. Kurenai scoffed. You're just saying that to get me to leave the house. You're going if I say you're going. There was silence in the Yuhi house as the two residents avoided each other's gazes and Naruto threw his book bag on the ground, ignoring his Ka-san's scowl. It was Naruto's time to snort. Your book bag doesn't belong on the floor, Naruto-kun. Your nails are digging into my arms, god damn it! Kurenai twisted him around and gave him a forceful shove in the direction of the object. Always have a cow. Kurenai frowned at him and slapped the back of his head, saying, You're going and that's final. Gates of the Academy. He silently accompanied Kurenai to the academy, adjusting his book bag on his right side. Kurenai had suggested that he bring his stick, but he insisted that he could get around just fine without it. Kurenai had even thought of asking Tsum if one of her dogs could assist in guiding Naruto around, but the boy had rejected the idea the moment it was put forth. Since Kurenai was given another C-rank mission this morning while her kid was sleeping, he was walking home alone once more. You see, Naruto was a joker, and she trusted him mainly. In their private training sessions, he had punched through the dummy when Kurenai brought up the topic of people pitying him because he was blind, but he still played the helpless blind kid act at school and wherever he went, to get freebies from store owners. If Naruto ever pulled a prank and went missing, she also advised Irika-sensei to check one of his favorite hiding places because she knew that he was usually at the Hokage monument. Although there weren't many books in Braille, he was thrilled when he found one, and even if there were a library full of Braille books, it probably wouldn't help him that much because most, if not all, of his teachers didn't understand Braille. On a more somber note, her son passed away last year and didn't try very hard in his studies, as she had done when she was younger. The two of them were conversing, more accurately arguing, quite quietly by the time the family of two arrived at the academy. Have you eaten your lunch? Books? What about your coat? Yes, and I'm wearing the coat. Kurenai felt like a new parent once more as she left her only son with Iruka-sensei and waited until they were out of sight before walking to the Hokage's tower. Asuma and the sixth headmaster approached her while she was drinking tea. Hi, Kurenai. I was informed that your son will be returning to the academy this year. He's blind in both eyes, so that must be difficult for you. Kurenai turned one of his pages of Ika Ika Make Out Paradise chuckling, but the sixth headmaster did not see his glare. It's not actually the sixth headmaster. A parent can only expect their child to do his best. Are you not concerned that if he were to graduate, he would end up dead on missions? Asuma asked. What does that mean? Are you two implying that my son is incapable of caring for himself? Kurenai received his best simile from the sixth headmaster, who raised his hands in defense. The three of them went silently to the Hokage's tower, with the sixth headmaster avoiding close contact with Kurenai so that Asuma would bear the brunt of his actions. The academy. His day at school wasn't getting any better. He was seated next to Shino Abramain, which wasn't a bad thing overall. He was quiet, didn't talk down to Naruto, and most importantly, treated him as an equal. His head was resting on the table, as usual. He didn't see the point of coming to the academy. All the books were in normal writing, so he couldn't answer any questions because you would need eyes for that. The teachers here couldn't even write or read in Braille. How was he supposed to know things if he couldn't read them? If he couldn't see it, why would he listen to them? Since his Ka-san was a terrible cook, he would usually spend his time sleeping through all of the tests and quizzes. He would occasionally be seen hanging out on the rooftop with the clouds and the bees during lunchtime, though he would never tell her that unless he had a death wish or something. The class itself wasn't very great. 95% of the time, they ignored him whenever there was a group activity that needed to be completed. Can I get everyone's attention, class? Iruka's anger was understandable given that the class's focus was split at the time of the announcement. It took the class an additional 5 minutes to settle down, or so Naruto had assumed, since he was no longer able to tell the time. Iruka paused for a moment before shaking his head. Stop talking, that caught their interest. All of the Academy's faculty have agreed to implement a seminar as this is a new year. We shall thus be available more frequently for a few hours after school if any of you require any further assistance in any area. Okay, let's go on to the next lesson. Lunch. Iruka was interrupted in the middle of his lecture by the ringing of the bell. Naruto was the last student to leave the room, and for some reason, his eyes were hurting again. He had his left hand on the wall, feeling for familiar cracks that led to the library, and his lunch was in the trash as usual because his mother had burned his sandwich again. How she had done that to a plain turkey sandwich was beyond him. Usually, he was the only kid here at lunchtime, unless another child was trying to find answers to the most recent test. Is there anything I can do to assist you, Naruto? The voice was deep, but it sounded like a child. I was wondering if the library had any books in Braille. He inquired daily about the availability of Braille books at the library, and the response was typically negative. I doubt this place does, but I happen to have a few books on my desk since a ninja must read and be prepared for about almost anything. There was a lot of moving before something heavy was placed on the table next to him, and Naruto's ears perked up when he realized that a librarian who knew Braille was genuinely on his side this time. This is yours. Naruto took the volumes with a smile that seemed to tear his face in two, saying, Now be careful. I'm grateful. I really appreciate it. The individual appeared to realize that Naruto hesitated. Naruto, what's wrong? Naruto scowled more deeply. You know my name, but I don't know yours. Itachi. Uchiha Itachi. The now identified Itachi brushed Naruto's hair and said, My little brother Naruto friend is in your class. What are the books about, Itachi-san? Basic things such as how to read Braille, the history of Braille, systems that use Braille, how Braille is a good thing to learn, how to increase your reading speed while reading Braille, and 300 Braille. When Itachi saw the expression on Nerda's face, he laughed and shoved the books in his hands while putting the other volumes in a bag for him. Nerda could almost feel the drool running down his chin. As the boy's eyes practically sprang out of their sockets with joy, Itachi said languidly, "Since you're so interested in reading Braille, maybe it'd be best for you if you took a few home tonight. You can come pick up the rest of the collection during seminar. Now leave." Later on in the day, the mission was a complete sham, and Kurenai wasn't in the best of moods this afternoon. The fire daimyo's wife lost their cat abroad, and that little demon bit through her dress again. Fortunately, the sixth head master decided to cage the little monster before it could do any permanent damage. In addition, the Hokage's little weekly report was due today, and she wasn't particularly excited to talk to him about Nerda's eye issue again. Despite the fact that both his doctor and the Kurenai herself recommended it, the blonde boy was too stubborn to use his stick anymore, and he detested the idea of using a guide dog to help him around. So when she got home, guess what she saw on her couch? Yes, a little puppy, and she knew one thing: she wasn't picking up any shit when that dog did it. "Yours, Ka-san," she thrust a book in her face and arched an eyebrow at the novel's slant. "Nara-chan," she asked as she poured water into a cup and put it in the microwave. The youngster gobbled bowl after bowl of ramen, and Kurenai shook her head. Where did you purchase the book?" "One of the new librarians at school." "Oh, really? Then, where was the dog from?" "He followed me on the way home and I thought he felt cold and stuff, so I thought it would be better for him to stay with us for a little while." "You understand that I'm kicking that dog's ass if he throws up or craps on my floor, don't you?" Nerdo made a show of scratching his head. "You mean it's the dog's?" Kurenai's weekly report was shorter than usual because she had been preoccupied during the briefing. To make matters worse, a super pervert was spying on Kurenai and a few other kunoichi in the hot springs. A woman can no longer even take a dip in the springs without being spied on. Where was Tswanda-sama when you needed her? Kurenai was currently drinking coffee at the kitchen table. "Ka-san, it was cute, even though Nerdo was almost 10 years old and still put on her dress like a shy 5-year-old. Kurenai didn't really understand Braille like Nerdo did. He had tried to teach her once, but after about 5 minutes, he lost patience and moved on. She knew that using Braille as a code would be a disadvantage on the battlefield, so she'd have to get Nerdo to teach her again sometime. "Look at what I found." Nerdo's little cheeks were puffed out like chipmunks, his whisker-like scars shining in the light. "Are you aware that in 480 BC, the conflict was referred to as the Battle of Thermopylae? In addition, these 7,000 Greek men fought over 100,000 Persians. From the way this book says it, the battle was pretty epic, but the Greek army still lost in the end though." Kurenai nodded and gave the overly animated blonde youngster a gentle pat on the head, saying, "What made it more epic is that it's true, and it made learning Braille worth the trouble." Kurenai laughed as her adopted son yelled the unfamiliar word, "This is Sparta!" throughout the entire night. 2 days later, in the morning at the library, a loud moan came from behind him, and black eyes swept the library, asking, "Itachi-san, Itachi-san! Where are you, Itachi-san?" Itachi's gaze were fixed on one person while his crimson-pleated kimono with stripes swung in the non-existent breeze. The boy handed out half a dozen books. The gloss was velvety. There was almost a begging expression on the boy's glaze as he placed them on the table. "Itachi-san, can I speak with you?" Nerda nodded understandingly. "Of course you can, but I'm afraid that I don't have enough time today to be talking to you all day like yesterday." "Hold on." After a pause, Itachi added, I assumed you would be busy because I gave you a lot of Braille basics. I know, but I'd finished most of them already. Really? Itachi asked, his arms crossed fiercely across his chest, his eyes following the small blonde boy's every move. Itachi drew the youngster to sit with him and asked, "Why are you working here, Itachi-san?" The child located the provided chair and silently awaited a response. Itachi questioned him. "You're not going to leave soon, till I tell, are you?" "I swear I'll be a good listener, Itachi-san." "You better be. I don't like repeating myself." Later in the afternoon, Iruka was concerned. "Don't do that." Iruka was on the verge of a nervous collapse. The morning session of class was interrupted by the absence of one of his younger pupils. "Naruto, where are you?" the terrified Chunin pondered. If Iruka had really lost her little fox boy, the boy's mother would not be pleased. When Naruto wasn't involved, Kurenai was usually a relaxed friend. But when he is involved, things may quickly turn ugly. Consequently, he was safe as long as Naruto existed. "Iruka-sensei," a voice said. Hope filled Iruka's heart as a mass of bone and flesh took his breath away. Naruto surrounded Iruka from all sides. As several Narutos sat on top of one another, Iruka's eyes grew wide. Iruka massaged his eyes and blinked. He picked himself up, picked Naruto up off the ground, and examined the boy for injuries. Naruto moved his hand against the wall as he walked beside Iruka. As usual, he recognized the fissures. "Sorry I'm late, Iruka-sensei. I got caught up with my studies in the library." On their walk back to the classroom, the scarred Chunin lectured the child about being late, but on the inside, Iruka was glad to see the blonde joker once more. He opened the door and saw a face covered in a mixture of oil and flour. Naruto's breathing accelerated as his shoulders heaved twice. When he laughed, he kept his head down and silently cursed himself. With a frown on his face, the scarred Chunin grasped the back of the boy's neck. As the blonde wriggled beneath him, he clenched his teeth and asked, "What do you have to say for yourself, Naruto-kun?" Happy birthday?" "Nardio." Shino was intrigued. When he said that his blonde friend Naruto was acting unusual, he meant that the blonde was being utterly crazy. He thought his pal, who was blonde, was concealing something. He appeared out of it more often and kept his head down more than was required. He didn't want to speak, but he would have to step in if Naruto didn't recover quickly. Iruka-sensei only lately began holding outdoor art lessons for them to attend. He faced off against Pink Ninja Haruno. Among Uchiha's numerous fangirls was Pink Ninja. Shino observed her adopt a simple stance and repeatedly crack her palms. In contrast to her, he tended to adopt a much more relaxed posture. After only a few seconds of fighting, Shino delivered a roundhouse kick to her temple. As Ino pulled her rival/friend off the mat and across the arena, the other children looked on. Iruka-sensei hoped this wouldn't be another stupid decision when he called the next bout. Naruto Uzumaki Yuhi vs. Dash. Everyone glanced to Itachi, who was carrying a box of Pocky. "Pardon me, Iruka-san, but may I suggest something? I think it would be a good idea if Naruto-kun faced off against my little brother Naruto-friend in a friendly spar for a few minutes." Iruka glanced at Naruto and saw that he was shaking his head, no, and holding his hands in a prayerful attitude. "I guess that would be alright, Itachi-san." Under his breath, the blonde lad mumbled, "Damn you, Iruka-sensei." The two fighters positioned themselves in the center of the mat, bowing to one another and silently glaring at one another to fail. Naruto easily parried the kick Naruto-friend threw at him, using the momentum to flip himself over him. Adjusting his shirt, he took the initiative to charge at Naruto-friend, gritting his teeth as Naruto-friend blocked his punch with his available fist. Pulling Naruto towards him, Naruto-friend punched him squarely in the face. As he cleaned the blood from his chin, Naruto said, I thought this was supposed to be a friendly spar. It was, but I became a little disinterested. Though, I hope you don't mind. Well, team, you had better start getting bored. We're going to limit this fight to a friendly spar. Remember that your brother is observing us. I'm sorry he witnessed your injuries. When Naruto's foot struck his jaw, his companion interrupted, saying, Then I guess I better finish dash. With Iruka and Itachi. With Iruka in the shade, Itachi remarked, It's nice to see Naruto sparring with other children his age again, as he sipped a glass of tea. How old is he? Itachi gave a nod. He usually spends his time fighting with some of the older chunins and his mother. I guess he enjoys a challenge. As the other students eagerly observed, Iruka and Itachi observed their disciples attempting to gain the upper hand. All youngsters like a challenge. Gosh! The flames of youth are blazing in these kids, Itachi said. That's one happy boy. Iruka saw Naruto kick his other student upwards, effectively ending the match. And that was a harsh kick. Alongside Naruto and his friend, Iruka-sensei was duped by the dobe. You mentioned that we couldn't use any form of jutsu. Naruto shook her head, hiding his eyes from his friend with his side bangs. Naruto started. No. A spirit art team wasn't that. It was referred to be a powerful kick. Perhaps you ought to work on yours. No comment. After laughing at what the youngster had said, Naruto easily lifted him up. At least you'd get to spar with your brother after school. Well done, Naruto-kun. You too, Naruto-friend-kun. Iruka-san, it would be best if I started. I want to make sure I have enough materials before I go on my mission later tonight. Thus, Itachi departed from the inquisitive pupils and weary instructor, but not before hearing some scathing remarks from our favorite blonde. What? I never heard that from you. Would you like me to accompany you? Itachi laughed and said, This place is boring. I apologize, Naruto. Oh no. Naruto pounded the floor like a 5-year-old, saying, I never get to do anything fun. Don't be concerned. After you graduate, you'll undoubtedly receive missions. Yes. Most likely in my fantasies. Later that night. Gaki, how was school today? He felt 3 familiar Churka signatures in the room and signed them. His mother was aware that he was a very private young man and that he had thought about lying to his mother and her little friends, or drink buddies, but he had a history of lying to his mother, so why lie and end up with a broken nose instead of telling her how he truly felt? In any case, he was likely to end up with a broken nose by the end of the night, and it would be healed by the following morning. Fine. What's the matter? Have you been struck? Hurt you? Are you experiencing the change? Kurenai said, her voice fading to a whisper. With wide eyes, Naruto exclaimed, Ka-san! I wouldn't want to discuss that in front of the company. He turned away from the others and trudged up the stairs, wiping every drop of blood off his chin, but a warm hand stopped him halfway. Naruto moaned even more as a certain pervert ruffled his already unruly hair. His foul mood worsened even more as more giggles sounded throughout the room, and he coughed red liquid in his palm. You realize I was kidding, don't you, Naruto-kun? Kurenai inquired. Naruto nodded. Kurenai was typically more talkative when she was with friends, but otherwise the house was normally quiet. When Naruto's legs gave out under him, Kurenai went into mother hen panic mode, and she scowled as the tiny boy didn't respond, his left arm going limp. For a brief period, she only noticed the wounded hand and dripping blood streaming all over her steps. Naruto? Naruto, in a matter of seconds, the sixth headmaster swept Naruto out of her arms and took them to the hospital. After half an hour. This is not logical at all. 30 minutes ago, he was in my arms. Be careful. Why? How come I didn't notice it? The blood was as visible as day. I ought to have witnessed it. Tears were silently trickling down Kurenai's cheeks as she held her arms to her breast. Probably because you were too busy teasing him and dealing with Asuma with your eyes the whole time. Shut up, Anko. In the end, Kurenai decided to vent her anger on the kitchen wall instead of hitting her closest buddy in the throat, so if you question her later, it was Naruto who made the fist-sized crater in the center of the kitchen wall, not her. It wasn't the first time Naruto had fainted from an attack, but it was the first that she hadn't anticipated, and that was what was hurting her the most at the moment. She knew that the Hokage would be informed of this incident as usual. Flashback 3 years ago. Are you okay in there, Naruto-kun? The blonde bundle of golden sunshine refused to take the medication all the physicians prescribed, saying it made the coughing worse. The boy was coughing blood like there was no tomorrow, and she was locked out of the bathroom on the other side of the door. It was a foolish question to ask. Naruto-kun. On his way to his bedroom, Naruto moaned even more loudly. It can't be all bad. How are you going to know? With tears streaming down his cheeks, Naruto slammed the door in her face. You have no idea what it's like to constantly be an outsider. The Kurenai Yuhi is my mother, and I am already blind. She heard him cry through the door, and it felt like someone had taken a knife and used the blunt blade to chop out her heart. It's just worse when everyone is pitying you because of a little anxiety attack every now and then. Naruto-kun, it's not regarded as sympathy. All the doctors and I want is for you to recover. Please allow me to enter the room. That is a bunch of bullshit. It's not pity, Naruto. Life is like that. Bullshit here, bullshit there. When Kurenai had had enough, she kicked in the door, took Naruto by the arms, and made him remain still. The only thing those doctors want from me is my death, and you're too blind to see it. Naruto, you're the only blind person here. Both physically and mentally. They genuinely care about you as a person, but your fear and hatred have made you too blind to notice it. As a live, breathing human person, not as a demon. Do you not recall the many times we laughed as a family? Yes, I do, but I also recall seeing and experiencing the glares and looks directed at me. I apologize for my inability to let go of a part of myself that has existed since birth. Naruto-kun, you're correct. I'm not sure how to handle your life. I can't tell you to stop being so angry. I can, however, assist you in gradually easing it until it disappears. All I want to do is assist you, Naruto. It is my duty as your mother to at least make an effort to assist you in resolving your issues. Do you not have enough faith in me to go that far? Kurenai turned back for a minute, walking down the hallway in silence, occasionally looking over her shoulder for that little boy she had come to love as her own. Naruto was silent for a moment, and then she was tackled from behind before her foot struck the last stair, muffled cries bringing her back to the present. Like a desperate mother attempting to comfort a distraught 2-year-old, she gently enveloped the sobbing blonde in her arms, massaging his back in tiny, smooth circles and rocking him back and forth in hurried moments. Naruto was emotionally still a 2-year-old, but physically he was almost a tween. She was unable to alleviate all of his suffering, but she might perish trying. The first item on the list was to keep her son away from 6th Headmaster and Guy for as long as possible. She would be furious if she saw her helpless son transformed into a miniature youth character or, worse, a miniature 6th Headmaster. 6th Headmaster wasn't all that horrible, but that's a different matter entirely. Nevertheless, mother and son remained that way for a while, at least until our favorite blonde hero tensed in Kurenai's arms. It was terrible enough that there was salmon and ramen mixed in there, but when Nuda suddenly puked in Kurenai's lap, she became alarmed upon seeing the blood. "You little brat, you are so ungrateful! Before you upchucked on me, you couldn't have warned me clearly! My favorite dress is this one!" Nuda covered his mouth once more, ignoring her. "Oh no, we're not going through this again." She quickly went to the restroom after scooping the blonde-haired soon-to-be shinobi in her arms. It's safe to say that Enko enjoyed the narrative when she used blackmail to get Kurenai Yahi to explain why she was late for the most recent Jonin meeting, but that's another matter entirely. The point is that Kurenai and Nuda's relationship was less tumultuous, and they had made new friends and worked out some old problems. Oh, what a wonderful and vibrant family! Finished the flashback. To put it mildly, Sarutobi was taken aback. Why would one of the most powerful and influential individuals in all 5 countries be in a state of literal shell shock? Well, it wasn't common to witness one of your best ANBU members making advances on another ANBU member, but who could blame him? For most shinobi, life was tragic and unpredictable. In general, women were enigmatic to the third Hokage. One minute you were kissing one other passionately, and the next minute you were lying on the ground with a broken arm. Strange, isn't it? In any case, Sarutobi couldn't help but feel as though he was interrupting a very significant moment when Itachi Uchiha was talking to said member. However, he also arrived at a very important point. It wasn't often that you saw Itachi Uchiha get pimp-slapped by a furious woman. With 6th Headmaster, that was probably going to happen because it happened frequently, but with Itachi Uchiha, it was just plain funny. The Hokage nodded at Itachi, allowing a brief smirk to slip past his barriers as he approached him and bowed respectfully, making place for him to enter the room. "I don't believe that picking up girls is part of the job, Itachi-san." She put an arm around Itachi's shoulder and gestured to him, saying, "Hokage-sama, I came to the hospital to check on Naruto, but that was too much to ask for. And it looks like I found a young arrogant asshole," she said. "I'll leave you and the jerk alone, Hokage-sama." Ignoring the gaze directed at her, Sarutobi whistled as she walked out of the room with a nonchalant gait. "That's one feisty woman, all right, Itachi. The asshole appellation probably wouldn't have been given to you if you could speak girl." "Hold on. I think she rated you a 4. Sarutobi laughed at the young nin's expression, dismissing the boy's look with ease. However, when Sarutobi's gaze fell upon Nuda's prone form, the smile turned into a frown. "So," he said, and the light-hearted and humorous tone vanished, and the ordinarily stern Uchiha was taken aback by Sarutobi's stoned expression. "How is he doing?" "Not so good, Hokage-sama." "How severe are his injuries overall?" Itachi scowled as he asked. "The physicians are still unsure. For one, we are awaiting the results of the blood tests." Sarutobi nodded. "Kurenai also wants some alone time with the boy." "Is he going to survive the night?" "Hold on. They don't think so." Iruka-sensei and Itachi-san witnessed him whoop Nuda's friend's ass, so it was an almost perfect day. However, this wasn't Nuda's day at all. His mother and her pals gave him a headache. Additionally, it didn't take a brainless monkey to realize that the youngster was in his mindscape with knee-level water and the smell of blood in the air. Once more. It wasn't the first time Naruto had woken up inexplicably from his mindscape, but it was the first time he had woken up in this squalid location and had to actually locate the Kyuubi. It was dumb. After all, this was his mindscape, right? Why would he need to locate that insane fox? Whatever the case, everything has a purpose and a place in the vast circle of existence. Alright, so it's possible that Naruto wasn't in the best of locations or that his health wasn't the best, but he still understood where he was going, right? Damn it! Naruto was beginning to feel anxious, angry, and exhausted all at once. You know that I'm simply a rainbow of emotions right now? The worst thing is that I'm talking to myself, too. In my mind. Not cool at all. As absurd as it sounded, Naruto was afraid to call for help because he didn't understand why he would need it in his own mind. The walls had cracks in various places, but other than that, the place looked pretty much the same. The water was neither rising nor falling at the same time. As usual, you're lost, tiny Naruto-chan? You know what, idiot? You've outgrown yourself. I would kick your ass right now if you weren't a coward and showed yourself. Kyubi laughed and said, Oh, how original. Kyubi, stop talking. I'm not the idiot who can't seem to find the cage, young Naruto-chan. Stop referring to me as young or little Naruto-chan. That quickly becomes stale. It seems that you are still denying who you truly are, young Naruto-chan. Naruto attempted to visualize himself standing in front of the cage with an overgrown fox grinning, well, smirking, but Kyubi chose to open his large lips once more. Naruto, you can't find me that way. Kyubi's voice came from everywhere. You have to find me the old-fashioned way. All right, Q-chan, pardon me. In fact, some of us would like not to have to trek 1,000 kilometers in order to locate old foxes. Naruto waded into the water, muttering to himself once again about how he was going to deep-fry himself some fox kebab or fox stew for dinner, knowing that the fox had heard him even if he got no response. Either way, Naruto had to know what had occurred. The cage was bigger than Naruto had remembered. It was empty, but the seal was still in place. Perhaps the fox went to get its nails done, but I'm not sure. Naruto approached his tenant's cage wearily, creeping to the edge. A dark laugh echoed through the room, but nothing seemed funny to Naruto. He thought to himself, giving yourself a pep talk isn't the best thing to do, while in the cage of an overgrown bunny who is ready to slice you up with claws as long as you. He weighed his head against a bar and walked gingerly into the cage. You can do this, Naruto. Show that fox who's he's messing with, he said. If I kill you, I die as well, you idiot. Naruto leaned against the steel bars, prepared to flee as soon as things got out of hand. He wasn't sure whether to be happy or angry. Kyubi, on the other hand, thought that Naruto was just a fly on the wall. He was as small as a grain, as helpless as a newborn kitten, and had a brain the size of a raisin. Well, maybe the Kyubi was making this up, but still, Naruto was in his cage, without any weapons. It was not a good plan, but he didn't intend to hurt him, yet. His health was more important right now because this also worried him. However, while Naruto isn't a small brat, why not have a little fun? If he becomes ill and dies, how can Kyubi get revenge on humanity for putting him in a pint-sized, ignorant midget? I'm not a tiny baka fox. I simply haven't yet experienced my growth surge. Kyubi stretched and said, Sure. Midget, that's the reason. The room was silent for an additional minute, and as Naruto was using his eyes to fry the fox and vice versa, neither of them noticed that the room was hazing. What were you looking for? Naruto inquired. Pardon me? With me, what do you want? He said it again. Why would I want to speak with such a brat who lacks gratitude? Why am I here if you didn't call me? Kyubi gave a snort. You are a weak little vessel. You must have been under a lot of stress because you ended up here. Stress? I'm not under any stress. So why are you present? For ball, that's what I've been requesting the entire time. Kyubi sighed. It really wasn't in the mood to deal with his container. He was just trying to get a little sleep before this buffoon came. That ship has gone now, all well. He swung his tails back and forth and tilted his chin sideways when he noticed a new presence. Naruto blinked and said, Too much. Too much? Ignoring this question, the fox reiterated. Too much. Come back to me after you have more information. Don't speak to me until then. Nuda's senses were overwhelmed by muffled voices, especially those of his Ka-san and the old man, who were arguing once more. Tightening his head in their purported general direction, Nuda gave a brief humph that caught everyone's attention in the room. He felt an invisible force sweep against him, causing his mind to crash into a new area. A moment later, he felt warm palms pressing against his forehead and a stinging pain piercing his skull. Ow, that sorta hurt, Ka-san. Nuda arched his eyebrow while saying, Don't get smart with me, mister. You don't believe I did this on purpose, do you? Hospitals are something I detest. If I knew where the nearest window was, I would leap out of it. You overdid it once more, Nuda scowled. What is meant by that? That's what everyone tells me. Everyone in the present room started to perspire, but our blonde hero was unaware of it. Kurenai-san, perhaps it was the doctor, but Nuda did not know this individual. I have young Nuda-san's medical report. That caught everyone's interest. He has high stress levels dash. No, I don't. Nothing is causing me stress. Those old farts who keep insisting that I have high stress levels may be the cause. Have you ever considered that? Nuda muttered. Kurenai gave the young, blonde individual a shake of her head. We think that he should be taken out of the academy for a while, or some of his activities should be less extensive. However, that's your way of life. If I don't move every 5 seconds, I'll turn into another shadow ninja. Itachi said. And the blood. Nuda could easily recognize Itachi's rich baritone voice because only a few other people he knew had a voice like that. There are only a few little blood clots in his lungs. He will be alright as long as he avoids stress and practices meditation. Hear that, Nuda? With a smile on her lips, Kurenai tousled Nuda's hair and said, Take the meditation and you'll be fine. How can we be certain that neither the meditation nor I are the issue? Nuda, the person with the blonde hair, grinned. Just asking, Ka-san. Kurenai had given everyone precise instructions that our favorite blonde hero was ordered on lockdown in order to ensure that Naruto was not traveling anywhere important. His muscles were cramping and twitching in every way for 3 freaking weeks. Lockdown! Ka-san, I'm 8 years old. Kurenai caressed the blonde boy's spiky hair and signed earnestly. I don't need to be on lockdown. You are 8 physically, but you're 5 mentally, Naruto. The sparks that flew from both mother and son would be viewed by onlookers as highly unhealthy. But whatever, staying in the hospital wasn't all that horrible. I mean, the food was awful, the bedding was constantly tearing, and there was always a chance that you would wake up next to a dead person. Hospitals were the best. Shino visited frequently after the academy, so his brief visit wasn't too awful. Since meeting Nuda 3 years ago, Shino has become more communicative. A flashback. Kurenai had just dropped off young Nuda with his Anko Nichin. Anko had wandered off to the closest dango stand, leaving the young blonde-haired person alone and on his own. The woman wore nearly nothing but a trench coat and a fish net underneath. Nuda will never know how she avoided tickets for disturbing the peace of the community. Since Naruto was still using his stick at this time, it would not be until a year later that he would give it up. Nevertheless, the majority of our current rookies were at this park, which meant that yes, so were their parents. Naruto's sight was gone, but his hearing was still intact, and most of their parents used his pranks as an excuse for their kids not playing with him. Pranks, really? They would glare at the young hero, but since he was blind, the looks and glares were never understood. Isolating the young boy worked better than trying to physically beat him. Fortunately for our young blonde, Kurenai was always in his personal space, which is good for a 5-year-old but bad for an 8-year-old. Since Naruto moved in with Kurenai, the shopkeepers have been kinder to him when he was around her, charging him as if he were just a regular person. Shino was naturally curious, so it didn't matter if he didn't engage with people. He was more of an observer than a participant, and his bugs provided him with plenty of company. At least that's what he always told himself. He was aware that most 7-year-olds found his appearance strange, but sometimes it's good to be different. When Shino saw Naruto disputing with Anko, his eyebrows shot over his hairline. How interesting. Naruto-san rarely comes to the park, especially with Anko-san of all people. I wonder where his Ka-san is. Oh well, he thought. Shino usually avoided conversation and Naruto approached people, but these two soon-to-be shinobi are not your typical shinobi. Shino walked quickly, ignoring the strange looks he received from people, especially his parents, who had no opinion about the boy because he rarely approached them for conversion. That is a different story, but for another time. In front of Naruto, who was alone in a swing set that was strangely silent for a swing set, Shino's little shape obscured all forms of sunlight, his flak jacket flowing in the air and his dark eyeglasses shielding his eyes from almost everyone in the park. Shino made his presence known by loudly clearing his throat. Naruto, like Shino, wore sunglasses, but for a different reason. Normally, swing sets are creaking and other noisy, but this particular swing set was calm. Am I able to assist you? Naruto-san, you're a really fascinating individual. Why do you ask? Just because, in spite of your injury, you are still committed to become a ninja. That's really fascinating. Shino's tone was level, steady, and nearly emotionless. Thank you? Could I just sit next to you? If it's okay with you, I'd want to do this conversion while sitting down, at eye level. Naruto gestured to the other seat. Be my guest. Naruto looked the other way, his anxieties going into overdrive. He had previously interacted with kids his own age, but he was no social expert when it came to interacting with kids. Even though Shino had mentioned that he was trying to continue a conversion, the two were calmer, more relaxed, and more relaxed than a pair of statues. Shino was taken aback by this new Naruto, who he knew would have been talking nonstop prior to the accident, but who was more reserved and quiet. Shino concluded that he preferred the old Naruto. Still, Naruto is Naruto. Shino is Shino. Shino found out that Naruto was actually failing the academy on purpose, and the two guys had walked home together, just 20 minutes apart. It is one thing to intentionally fail because you are ignorant of the subject. Failure is one thing, but success is quite another. So why decide to fail? Isn't it feasible to move on without disclosing all of your secrets? Shino inquired. Shino-san, anything is possible. I suppose I might use Shadow Ninja-san's comment. Trying to pass is just too troublesome. I believe it would be best for you to give it your all while keeping Naruto-san at bay. I'm not saying that you should win Rookie of the Year or anything. All I'm asking is that you try at least a little. I'll think about it. You forgot something, Gaki. With their backs to the voice, Shino and Naruto came to a halt. Naruto signed. Shino's high collar obscured his sneer as Anko struck the young blonde with the enigmatic instrument. Anko-nichan, I do not need that contraption in order to get around. Gaki, that's not the point. You're going to utilize this stick in one way or another, and I acquired it at a bargain. But what if that seemingly harmless stick breaks his legs? Anko shot him the "Are you on crack right now?" stare as Shino casually asked off. I completely concur with Shino-san. These days, sticks can murder people. Shino nodded. What you end up with is a strange beginning for two wonderful friends, a furious Anko, and two pals who have two enormous lumps on the side of their heads. The end of the flashback. Even Shino's presence was insufficient to prevent Kurenai from placing Naruto on lockdown after the blonde-haired individual was discharged from the hospital. Yunasan had been there for a while, helping him catch up on his studies and everything, with the delicate assistance of Amber, Asher, and Alicia. Irika-san was reportedly on some super-secret mission or something, and it was almost impossible for Titus, Claire, and Sierra to visit him because they were busy helping out with the news shop downtown. It was also his luck that Marlene-chan and Tifa-chan were out visiting a relative in the far west. What happened to the times when a child could have fun without being subjected to a pointless lockdown? Everyone was busy these days. Shino sipped his tea and remarked, "This lockdown is not that bad, Naruto-san." Not too bad? Shino, there are security dogs and seals all over the house. My Kasen will send me back to the hospital with all of my fees covered if I risk leaving this building. After 3 weeks, the Uzumaki-yohi household. I'm offering you a fantastic chance to give up, Naruto-kun. You're not going to win. I refuse to give up the 6th headmaster. For the sake of everyone on the planet who is not twisted, I will prevail. I warned you. 6th headmaster was a mysterious man with silver hair that defied gravity itself. He was said to have learned over 1,000 spirit arts, to have known the secret to defeating paperwork, and to have somehow escaped death when Kurenai asked him about his favorite hobby. Bullying a blind 8-year-old isn't exactly helpful for one's self-esteem, but at least that's what Kurenai came home to this evening. The 6th headmaster! 6th headmaster began naively at the Gen Spirit Art mistress, blinking. What? We were merely engaging in arm wrestling. If you're pissed and you know it, clap your hands. Clap, clap. Clap your hands if you know you're angry. Give a clap. Give a clap. Your expression will undoubtedly convey your anger if you are aware of it. If not, clap your hands. Clap, clap. You're such a bad influence, Naruto-kun. At the statement, Naruto simply shrugged his shoulders. His mother was aware that he detested babysitting, and these kids wanted to learn something new, even if it was completely out of character for their age group. Naruto was not one to worry about such unimportant things because life was too short for that. But the voice had other thoughts. Naruto-kun? What if they sing that tune and someone hears them? Calm down, Tenten-chan. You can always point the finger at someone else for your troubles. If I had to choose one person to hold accountable for this legitimate action, it would be Kiba or a friend of Naruto. Why? Easy, Ten-chan. One is an emo Avenger wannabe who glares at all living things on the planet because he is angry at the world. You have to question whether he's gay at times. Like butter on rice, women swarm to him, but he treats them like bugs. There's something wrong with that, Naruto said to himself. What about Kiba? Kiba's just my rival. Imagine this. 2 young would-be killers watching toddlers for meager pay, one teen doing his best not to kill himself or strangle a small child. Naruto's tan face turned whiter than a ghost as wet liquid dripped off it, and if you were not too loud, you could hear squeals of joy. Ten watched with a look of amusement on her face as she bounced a newborn on her shoulder, her maternal instincts taking over for a moment. Babies are small, but who said they couldn't be killers? They're evil these days. Tenten's buns were a bit of a mess, with lines literally craving under her eyelids. Her sleeves were torn at the sides, but at least her pants were still intact, unlike a certain someone who started chopping them with scissors. Babies are a lot of fun, aren't they? Take a lunch break. You still got a little smudge on your pants. Stop talking. Do not disparage me. Oh, you finally know a big word. Stop talking. I won't put up with your bullshit. Naruto-kun, there's no need to shout. I'm just highlighting. Splash. Smack. I am so sorry, Tenten-chan. Splash. Smack. Tenten. What? You realize how fantastic, this shirt was? It's a shirt. The shirt was fantastic. You fool, you're blind. In any case, you cannot see that clothing. You don't have to be blind to know what a wet shirt feels like and miss how awesome looking it probably was. Baby, it's called retribution. The narrative is over. Excuse dash. SDORYNs. The conclusion. Completed. We've packaged it and dispatched it. And it won't return. Never. What was sent away? Just shut up, Nudakun. The Academy. Why did it take you guys so long? You only have 30 minutes for lunch. Quietness. Did you guys enjoy yourself a bit? Stop talking. Enko was wearing a pink kimono with crimson sky pink ninja petals all over it. Her hair was pulled back in a bun, and she had a mischievous twinkle in her eyes and a playful smirk on her face. If someone had looked closely enough, they would have seen how her lips tightened at the end of her statement. I'm just saying, I'm surprised that you would want to go at it, in a daycare in the daytime. Enko, we didn't dash. Hey, I would have waited until at least all of the children had left. When you're in love, you do insane things. It was now Tenten's turn to appear pale. Oh, Cammy, no. 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 Oh, no. 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 All good, I believe she understands. What's wrong with us being in love anyway? Oh no! No. 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 Oh my God, no!